So welcome back to another episode of the Smart Panel. Today we're going to be talking about networking, specifically Unifi networking, because that's what we all use. A lot of people have commented on some of my videos asking, for a bit of information about why I use this, and I thought I'd use this as an opportunity to talk to Connor and Tez. They're smart home experts from our home automation consulting and installation company called Luxia, and we'll also use Unifi to see what they think. So welcome, guys. How are you
Hi,
doing?
you're all right. Good to be back.
So, yeah, we spoke briefly on another video about the networking equipment that we use and why we choose it, and found out that we all use Unifi Ubiquity equipment. So, can you give us sort of a bit of an overview about what that is? Who is Unifi?
It's basically the we've used it in three different formats really. So we've used it at home, we've used it professionally in the theatre, and also professionally in clients' homes as well. We kind of used it at home first based on the doorbell that we got. So we got one of the Ubiquity doorbells and was like, oh, like to record, it would be nice if it was kind of like recording through a Ubiquity product like in the home. So we thought, oh, well, we'll get a Dream Machine because we want to kind of upgrade our network anyway, in the home. So we kind of got our first Dream Machine with a little hard drive in, and then the video doorbell would record to the Dream Machine. I was kind of when we first got it, I was more impressed by the packaging than the product at first, because Ubiquity are really good at the way that they package their products. Like even the screws are like individually like in this little sleeve that you can just pull out. It kind of feels like a premium product even before you've tried it. So I was impressed just by that. Connor did the initial setup of it. So if I don't know if you want to go through the setup of how we've set up at home, Connor.
Yeah, so when we first started, I just wanted to kind of break everything down into its own kind of like virtual network, so a VLAN, because we had like cameras. At this point, we had Home Assistant, so we had our IoT devices, we had our kind of just general network devices like our mobiles and things like that. So I just wanted to sort of start to break that down into individual VLANs, just to kind of manage it better, and also from like a security point of view, it means I could add firewall settings to kind of block certain traffic going to certain areas. I could stop the cameras from trying to access the internet if they didn't need to. I could just kind of control all of those devices a little bit better. And especially when we started adding kind of more smart devices in, and then we were adding like Wi-Fi plugs and stuff, and just the network was starting to it was getting quite big. So I just wanted to sort of have a product, a managed product that I kind of trusted and knew would work. And Unifi was that product. I'd heard it mentioned before. I'd seen like reviews of it, and it wasn't like ridiculously expensive. It is still like an expensive product, in comparison to kind of the things that you can get. But it was like a good price point for us, and it kind of ticked all of the boxes that I needed it to tick.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think one of the key things that you've touched on is managed. The word managed came up quite a lot.
Yeah.
And I think one of the big differences between your traditional consumer Wi-Fi networking products and I think Unifi Ubiquity networking products fall more into the small business, small to medium enterprise type thing, is whether they're managed or unmanaged. And for those people listening or watching, a managed networking equipment is sort of has an operating system on it, doesn't it? Like you can control individual aspects of everything quite granularly, and every single port on the device can be assigned to different networks, and it gives you a lot of flexibility. What alternatives have you ever used in managed? You mentioned you haven't even looked anywhere else. Have you used anything at all unmanaged that you've used?
Unmanaged we have. So unmanaged, if we just want to like extend a port or whatever, like all the Netgear stuff's pretty good. Like their gigabit switches, they're really cheap. They're super like easy to get a hold of. You can get them at like Curry's if you need one last minute. You get one at Amazon next day or whatever. And they're pretty solid. The only thing that could kind of break on them is the external power supply, but like again, they're 10 to a penny. You can grab them. We've used some TP-Link extenders when we're extending the Wi-Fi network. Again, just based on the client's price point. If we're like Ubiquity access points can be quite expensive, especially like there's a new range kind of nearly every other week. But the TP-Link stuff, again, you can get your hands on it really easily, and it does work. That also does work, but it also integrates nice with your Unifi stuff as well. It's kind of just plug and play.
Would you always recommend then using sort of a Unifi or managed device as the core part of your network, and then use the sort of unmanaged pieces more on the peripherals? Is that how you approach it?
think so. Yeah, I think it depends on the situation as well. It kind of depends on what you're trying to go for. If you have got like a lot of VLANs in place and you do need to kind of direct the traffic around the house or around wherever it is that you're installing it, then obviously you'd want a more managed system so you could actually do that a lot more effectively. And but if like VLANs aren't really that important and you're not needing to kind of control the traffic in that way, then like an unmanaged system is also perfectly fine, and that would work. If you don't need that kind of fine control, then a managed system isn't really worth it.
So, we're quite technical people. You mentioned things like VLANs a lot and setting up VLANs and segregation. Why would someone want to do that in their house? Why would you spend the money to be able to do something like that?
Yeah, so for me, it was more of like sort of being able to control it, being able to sort of organize the network better, and also from like a security point of view as well. So you can kind of stop traffic from going to places that it shouldn't really be going to, or from going to places that you don't want it to go to. So if you don't want certain devices to access the internet, I think I mentioned before the cameras that we've got. If you don't want them to kind of access the internet, I know some people are sometimes concerned about them maybe contacting somewhere, or you can kind of stop them from doing that. So you can just like restrict them to your network instead. You can do that through the VLANs and like the firewall. So yeah, I think just sort of to organize and kind of secure the network.
There's things like guest networks and stuff like that as well, like creating like various Wi-Fi networks or whatever. Some people prefer that now, so they can say, oh, my guest connects to my guest network. They then don't have access to any of my Home Assistant bits. They don't have any access to my cameras or anything like that. Because obviously people can connect like wirelessly out there. And that's always a bit of a concern with people.
I think my background was in a past life. I was a networking engineer. I set up a lot of small business and medium-sized business networks, and we would use in that environment VLANs and virtual networks in general to have like your voice over IP phones on one, your desktop PCs on one, your printers on another one, your servers on another one, and then a whole different one for internet accessible devices. And the goal back then, this is a few years ago, was to stop someone unplugging the phone, plugging in their own laptop, and then having access to the same part of the network that your servers were on, or unplugging a printer and installing some sort of dodgy device. And so when I went to set up my own home, I tried to apply that principle. So all of my random AliExpress internet devices that I buy, I put on a own separate network because I don't want them to talk to my desktop PC or my work computer. Also, my cameras that I've got installed outdoors have a network cable that sort of hangs out on a wall outside my house. And what if someone were to plug something into that? I don't think anyone's targeting me in that way, but that's sort of the environment that I grew up in. So I have each of these on a separate network as well. My cameras can't access the internet. Most of my IoT devices can't even access the internet, except for ones that, it makes sense for them to do. Then I have a very separate network for my trusted device, my work laptop, my desktop PC, those kind of things. And that's purely from a security point of view for me. Have you had any challenges with that? I know that I've had problems when you put a Chromecast on one network and you try and cast from a phone on another network. Have you come across anything like that?
Yeah, I think again we've been like quite fortunate with that, but I know multicast can sometimes be a bit of a problem there, but we've kind of been okay with it. To be fair, we don't really use like Chromecast devices and things, so we've not ran into that problem yet, but I know that can be quite a big problem.
One of the advantages for me for Unifi was they had a whole support article about how to set up Chromecasts on different networks, and there's actually just like a little switch in the networking user interface to enable multicast support across VLANs, for example. And I think for me, that was back in the other equipment I used in those large business networks. Everything I do done by command line and like scripts and through like telnetting into it or plugging in a specifically designed type of cable for Cisco. And so having Unifi provide that user interface that makes it less technical. I wouldn't say not technical, but less technical.
Yeah, the user interface is class. It's pretty self-explanatory if you just kind of work your way through it. Even their mobile application's really good. You can kind of like change ports and stuff via your phone, which is great. Out of the home, out of the client's home, you can kind of swap things around. That came in super useful when we installed Ubiquiti in the theatre that we work at. So we've got basically 2 Dream machines, one is a main and one is a backup. And it's running the entire network for technical. So it's running all the lighting equipment, it's running all the sound equipment, it's running all the AV equipment. But every now and then we stream from the theater as well. So we kind of want to make all that bandwidth down to one network. So we kind of turn the internet off on all of the other VLANs and just focus it down that one. So that's got all of the bandwidth to play with, because the last thing we want is for kind of the internet to go down or to be shared somewhere else, or someone's tapped on somewhere and they're downloading some games in the edit suite or something somewhere else when we're trying to stream out live. And so it's great for that. So it's great for us to monitor it when we're not there as well, because there's a few of the technicians that it's still networking still quite new in that industry, like in the theatre and events industry. Everything's still normally like copper cables to everywhere, but now everything is literally just plug in a switch, and now you can have all of these ports for DMX Lite, and you can have all of these ports for Dante networking or whatever. And it's just trying to get people into that mindset. But the app's great because there's loads of times that we've been in somebody else's house and someone from the theatre's around going, oh, I can't get internet down the sound network. I'm like, oh, I'll just do it from the app. And I can just jump on the app on my phone and do it from there.
Yeah, but again, that's all like separated out. So the lighting stuff has its own VLAN, the sound stuff has its own VLAN as well. And again, going back to what you said before, that's so you don't plug a device into a certain network and then all of a sudden you're controlling something else that you're not meant to be controlling. It's just like, it's to kind of separate it all out to kind of like prevent that from happening.
I can see that being valuable, and I agree with the user interface being, great. The mobile apps are fantastic. The camera app is one of the best. Sort of the Unifi Protect app is one of the best sort of NVR apps that I've come across. But on the flip side of that, and I don't, I have like I said before, a love-hate relationship with Unifi, specifically around their UI. They do a lot of updates. I feel like they often try and ship shiny rather than solid. And I've had times when if I left the the web interface open for a minute or two, the whole thing just freezes and I have to hard refresh before I can type anything or click any of the buttons. I've had updates come through they had a point where they switched from an old UI to a new UI, and most of the functionality was missing in the new UI, and you had to keep switching back to the old one to do half of the stuff you needed to do. And I think that kind of, as a product manager by trade, that kind of attitude, I understand, because it lets you get things in hands of customers early, but when you need that stability and the predictability of a user interface for something as core as networking, I don't know. I don't always agree with that approach. Have you had any sort of negative experiences with it at all?
Yeah, I think just kind of the same points that you've kind of touched on there. Just like running into things where like they've maybe made a change which actually wasn't for the better. Like it was actually better before they changed it. So it's like, well, I don't really see why you've done this update because now it's worse. But again, they've normally fixed that later down the line. But it's like, why did you push that update out in the first place if you knew that it wasn't as good? So just little things like that. That's kind of why we refrain from doing an update until we've kind of waited a little bit. And then, you hear other people say, oh yeah, this is fine. Like it's safe. I suppose in the same way that you update Home Assistant as well. Like you don't always update it straight away. You wait a little bit, see what people have to say. And then, like, that it's kind of safe to go ahead. But yeah, just kind of like the same points, just pushing updates when like there wasn't really a point to it, changing the interface as well. I remember that time when they had the old one and then the switch to like the brand new one, and it was just like trying to find things all over again was just like an absolute nightmare.
Yeah, I think it's just not just user interface issues I've had. There was one morning I woke up and my network wasn't working, and my Dream machine, like the brains of the whole network, had just reset to factory defaults overnight, and I don't know why. Luckily, I had the cloud backup on, which allowed me to restore it all from a week ago and hadn't made any changes in that week. So the restoration experience was quite nice, but I preferred not to have gone through it personally.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I get really worried about going and leaving my partner at home for a week and it's going down or something while I'm away. Like, yeah, I don't know. I just don't trust it all the time.
Yeah, luckily we've not had anything as bad as that, but I know that when we've tried to like initially set it up before, it can be like a right pain, like it just doesn't want to like set up, like you follow the process and it just keeps saying like failed, like and you just kind of do the same thing over and over and over again, and then eventually it just works, but you never did anything different. So we've had that quite a bit.
I mean, on the whole, it is quite reliable, and I'm thankful I have a good friend of mine who runs his Unifi equipment on the sort of alpha release channel, so he gets the updates before anyone else. I have mine on the standard one, so it's good. You can control what level of update you get. Do you get the bleeding edge, newest stuff first, or do you wait till everyone else tries it? And he's like beta testing this thing for me. He tells me when it works and when it doesn't, but I would never run my house and the core infrastructure of my house on the front end of the firmware update.
Yeah.
So, we talk about setting up a smart home from scratch a lot of the time. And one of the first things I did was put a network in to my house, and it was while we were building. We've spoken a lot about this in the past, but what do you recommend when you first come into a new smart home or building a home for the first time or taking over an existing home? If you had to pick your starter pack of Unifi stuff, what would you pick?
We just talked about this before the chat. It would literally be a Dream Machine and 2 access points. Like, it's less than $1,000. It's solid. If you're in a new home, great. You can now start to run loads of Ethernet cable to your Dream Machine, maybe to another managed switch, if depending on how many rooms you've got. But that's like a really good starting point where you've got good, reliable Wi-Fi around the home. 2 access points generally does like a good medium-sized home. Like, it's not a problem upstairs, downstairs. And it's managed, so in the future you can kind of start managing that traffic and managing any other additional things that you put in.
The network is very modular, so I started off with a Dream Machine, but also a 24-port PoE switch because I wanted to hardwire most of my stuff. And the entry-level PoE switch was, I think, 250, 300 pounds, which is amazing when every port has power coming out of it. There's 2 different PoE standards on it. I was able to hardwire pretty much all my cameras, my access points into those, my desktop PCs, my work laptops, anything I could. And so that's where I extended my network slightly from your default, but I agree with the other pieces. Another piece I had to do, because I live in London, my house is very thin. It's like 4 meters wide from left to right, but it's 4 stories high because it's a terrace house. So I had to have 4 access points because signal didn't bounce through the floor that well.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you set up your access points, do you have any best practices around channels or signal strength or anything like that?
Yeah, so the channels is normally, again, like we touched on this in the kind of the Zigbee video that we did. We always perform a scan. So we'll always kind of check what's already around in the area, and then we kind of just base it on that. So we'll try and kind of work the clients, like the network around what already exists. But then also making sure that we don't overlap their stuff as well. So separating out the channels of their access points so you don't get kind of like both channel interference with stuff. Then if they've got a Zigbee network as well, there's obviously that to take into account. So making sure that that's not kind of clashing. So yeah, it's just kind of doing a scan, checking what's around, and then just like basing it on that basically.
Then making sure it's definitely not left on auto, where it can auto scan and change like a few weeks later or whatever. We met a client that it kind of really screwed over. And it kind of stumped us for a little while as well. We're like, why are these Wi-Fi devices just not working? And it was just the access point was just constantly changing channel, trying to find a stronger signal, which is great. But at the same time, like, stick with what you've got, like make it manual, and then it'll just work every time.
Personally have specified channels on the 2.4 gigahertz like band, but I have my 5 and 6 sort of gigahertz bands set to auto because I think they're less interfery in my experience. Do you guys see a similar situation there?
Yeah, we don't really give dedicated stuff to like the 5 and 6 either. It's mainly just 2.4, and that's mainly because of like the Zigbee stuff as well. It just tends to kind of clap with that. So that's kind of why we do it for 2.4 too. But yeah, 5 and 6 we tend to just put on auto as well.
And again, here in my environment in London, where everyone's very densely packed in, I see a lot of other 2.4 gigahertz networks penetrate through my walls, but not a lot of 5 or other gigahertz networks. I think the way those spectrums work, they don't get as far through thick equipment. And one of the things that I also noticed I had to tune with my access points, like I said, thin house, tall house, was the signal strength itself. So I set my 2.4 gigahertz radios to low transmit power. And I found that then my phone, as I walked through the house, would hop between the access points far more effectively. Whereas if I had it set to high or even medium, when I went down 2 floors, it would still be connected to the top floor access point. So it thought it had a good signal, but it couldn't actually talk to that. Have you set things like that up in bigger properties?
Yeah, so a lot of the houses that we've been in are usually just on like high still. But again, going back to the theatre, so some of those are set to low. Because again, like the same thing, we've got a lot of different access points around the place. But when you're kind of going from space to space, just again, like what you said, it's trying to stick on to that one access point, which is actually like a mile away when there's one like right beside you. And so we have set some of those to low. But usually in somebody's house, we've kind of so far it's just been set to high.
And so I know a lot of other vendors out there have the ability to change the channels and to change the signal strength as well. But what I really like about the Unifi piece is the different form factors of the access points. You've got your ceiling mounted, you've got ones that, you can sit on top of a bookshelf, you've got in-wall ones. Do you use, what ones do you use mainly?
We normally use the UFOs, which I call them, like like the ceiling mountable ones. They look good as well. Like they kind of just disappear in your eye line if your ceiling's the right color and all that jazz. We've used some outdoor ones, so the outdoor big square mesh style ones, which are great for outdoor. If people want like Wi-Fi on their patio, do you know what I mean? We've kind of just mounted those on the outside of the wall.
And you you mentioned the word mesh then. You can, with the Unifi access points and many other systems, use a mesh network where one access point talks to another one over the Wi-Fi and then redistributes that signal. Is that what you do with the Unifi ones as well?
Yeah, yeah. So we have created. So it's not very often that we do like a mesh setup. We normally obviously just try to get like a cable ran back to either the Dream Machine or some form of switch. But if there is like a situation where we can't do that, then we do try to kind of create a little mesh. And we did it once at the house in Durham, and where we created like a small mesh outside. Because like the Wi-Fi in is like garden was terrible, but he had like this. It was almost like an outdoor office, but it was like at the very bottom of his garden, and he could like never get a net connection in there. So we created like a mesh between there. So we kind of had like a little point to point just to get some like Wi-Fi down there for him.
That one was really tricky as well because like location is key, and at the time we were still quite new to this, so we're like, oh, if we just put that on the wall there, yeah, that'll definitely get all of the garden. And it was kind of getting to his garage, but then not to this, like it's almost like a sun house that he's built for his office, like behind the garage. And we're like, oh no, like yikes, it's not where we said it would be. So it was literally moving it about 5 meters to the like just along the side of the house, and that kind of got everywhere. He was like, oh, I can watch Netflix with a 100 meg download in my office now. Like it's like, all right, great, but literally 5 meters, he had nothing. Like it just wouldn't even connect.
That
So
was
location is
like
key.
Yeah, that was like a crazy one. Like, just his garage completely killed the Wi-Fi. Like, just this like one wall, just like completely killed the whole thing. I was like, that's insane.
So one of the things I did was sort of use a lot of blue tack and things to stick them with a really long network cable up on where I thought I should place them and walk around with a signal scanner to make sure that it was working. And then when I finally found where I thought was the sweet spot for that particular place, I'd ask the electrician to punch a hole through and run the cable there. So I did that with a lot of my security cameras as well. I would run a really long cable and hold them against the wall to see where the field of view was before I got them to drill that hole through the board to install them. I think, yeah, location is key for access points, cameras, all kinds of these types of things. So I think one of the things that we all agree on is that the router that comes with your internet connection is probably not the best. That the settings that are set on that are probably the ones that are going to cause the most sort of interference. Would you recommend then someone who's watching this and wants to maybe build out a smart home start with something very small? Like I know the Unifi have that, I don't know what it's called anymore, but it looks like a small can that has all the Wi-Fi built into it. It has 4 ports built into it. It's just like everything in a box, kind of like that. Or would you recommend they just put their money where their mouth is and go straight in for the system you mentioned first?
It all depends on if you kind of know how far you're going to go with it. Like if you're going to go, yeah, I just want a standard Wi-Fi network, couple of devices, yeah, unifying a CAN is perfect. But if you know down the line you're going to start adding additional devices, you're going to maybe run in lots of hardline stuff, you might as well pay for it before you start, because you're going to end up paying twice. It's one of those situations. It's like, pay for it once, it's done, you've got it, you're future proof. And that's kind of my best advice. It just, you kind of know how far you're going to go. Like some things do suit certain clients where it's like, actually, I just need that and I'm not doing anything else with it. That's it. Cool, get one of those. But on the flip side, if you know you're going to start going down that route and you kind of get addicted to it, it just happens. Like you go, oh, I'll get one of those and I'll get one of those. And it's like, oh, I've run out of ports. I need to buy a new switch anyway. You might as well just kind of start off with the decent stuff.
And yeah, I think it kind of depends on how confident you are as well. If you're not kind of very confident and you're not very technical, then Unifi is probably not the way to go, because I think you could actually cause more damage than good. If you didn't actually know what you were doing within kind of the interface, you could set it up in a way which actually makes you more vulnerable than secure. So I think it kind of depends on your skills as well. If you're willing to kind of learn as you go, then that's fine. But if you kind of just want a kind of set and forget kind of set up, or more like a plug and play, then Unifi is probably not going to be for you. You might want something that's kind of unmanaged and a little bit more basic, I suppose.
My advice would be not going too basic though. My parents had a ton of problems with their Wi-Fi, and they live in Australia, so I can't really get over there and help them out all the time. So I shipped them a Google Nest Wi-Fi package. It had 3 boxes that you plug in randomly around the house, and that was significantly worse than what they had before. It all had to be managed through the Google Home app or something. There was no web interface to it. All of the controls were hidden. You could do almost nothing to it. And I think that was even further down the other side of the spectrum. I think you should be able to have some sort of control of things, even if you don't know what you're doing yet. If you notice things aren't working, you can research them and then have the opportunity to actually take effect on them. I think some of the stuff out there from Netgear, TP-Link, all of these I've heard, never used them personally, some great starting points there. Now, talking about, Unifi in general, not just networking, you mentioned the doorbell. I see that every other week they launch an entirely new line of products. They've got door access points now where you can use key fobs to unlock doors. They've got a NAS device. They've got electric charging points now as well. Have you come across anything other than the networking equipment and the doorbell?
Yeah, so that's pretty much all we've kind of worked with is the network and the protect system. So we've never, because they've got like the access that you said, they've got like the NAS now, they've got all sorts of different things. I think they've also got amplifiers out now as
Oh,
well.
yes, I have heard that.
It feels like they're sort of kind of branching out to a lot more things, but we've never sort of used any of those before. Mainly because we already have products that we use for those particular things. So it's just we've not had a reason to kind of buy them. But I have spotted they are bringing out like a lot more kind of like different types of devices now.
I personally use the cameras. I use the bullet cameras and the doorbells as well. I like the fact that they record to the same physical device, that I have running my network. You just whack a hard drive into my Dream Machine and I can record like a month or 2 of video footage locally in my house. And I don't need a separate NVR to do that. I know you recommend other NVRs that you use with your clients, but I've seen that one of the things they released a few weeks ago was support for other cameras, non-Unifi cameras, through the ONVIF protocol on to the Dream Machine as well. Would you consider moving over to a single device, or what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's just because we've never really tried it, but like it's for us, it's like the more streamlined, the better. So if it's all going to the same place, it's easier accessible. It's kind of less things to go wrong. And obviously, if that goes down, everything goes down. But yeah, I would definitely consider doing that. Just again, it's all in one place, hopefully on one app. Like it's all, yeah.
Yeah, I think just kind of touch on that point that you said, where like if that goes down, then everything goes down. I think that's kind of one of like the biggest like cons with it. So obviously, when you've got kind of different separate devices, it is a little bit of a pain. Plus, you've got like all this different hardware. But at least if one of that like bits of hardware goes down, you're only losing a little bit of control. So like if the NVR goes down, you only lose the cameras. Whereas like if it was all kind of joined to one, you would lose your network, you'd lose your cameras, you'd lose your home assistant, like you don't want to kind of lose too much in kind of one go.
I think the Unifi user interface now recommends that I buy a shadow gateway. I don't know if the marketing department got a feature request through where they're like, yeah, let's see if we can get everyone to buy 2 Dream machines. I think that level of redundancy makes a lot of sense for business that's making money through that, but it would be hard for me to justify buying another Dream machine that just sits there for a rainy day.
Yeah, we did it at the theatre, so we've got like a main and a backup, but you've still got to physically swap all the Ethernet cables around. So even though it's a backup, you've got to be there to be able to like get it up and running again. I know there is a feature coming eventually where it will just swap over, but at the moment you still need like manual like person to actually do that.
Yeah, so that automatic failover feature is out now. I've just not set it up yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just not got around to trying that yet. But yeah, like before, it was like a pain because even if the network did go down, you would still need somebody there to swap all of the network cables over. So it's like, well, is that actually any good? Like, yeah.
I see it being valuable in that sort of environment, but for my house, it seems a bit overkill. Yeah, and on the last piece about their door access, I've got a strike lock on my front door that connects into an old school intercom system. So when we go out for get some milk or something, I don't take the key with me. I can just type the pin in. But at night time, I can just deadlock the door so no one can come in through that sort of method. I really don't like the intercom system. It's really janky and from 10, 15 years ago. And I've added that Unifi door access system to my basket and then removed it so many times now. One day I'll get around to playing with it. I think it would be great to have it integrated into one system, to be able to use my existing doorbells and cameras alongside, unlocking the door from my phone. That would be really cool. But again, it's my house. I can just use the key.
Yeah, but it is cool. You need to get it. It is cool though.
Maybe after watching this episode, Unifi might send me one for free. What's the point of doing this if we can't, solicit sponsorships? Well, thanks guys for taking the time to chat with me again. I really enjoyed it as normal. If you in the audience have anything that you'd like us to talk about or to cover, please let us know in the comments. We're going to be releasing these as regularly as we can according to our schedules. So thanks, Taz and Connor, for joining me, and see you on the next one.
Thank you very much. See you later.